thought it was an assured performance by Philip Hammond, and he was trying to give reassurance as well. And I think his style is noticeably different to that of his immediate predecessor, George Osborne, and indeed a predecessor of long standing, who was Chancellor for many years, Gordon Brown. And he's a very different sort of Chancellor from both of those, and probably the right sort of Chancellor for the sort of situation in which the government finds itself. In terms of significant announcements, the £23 billion extra borrowing aimed at R&D and infrastructure, which is clearly welcome. I think what was also significant were the elements of continuity. So, for example, Hammond has said they will stick with Osborne's previous promise to reduce rate of corporation tax to 17% by 2020, and similarly on the personal tax side, increasing the personal allowance ultimately to tax-free personal allowance ultimately to 12,500 by 2020, and the higher rate at which 40% becomes chargeable will eventually end up at 50,000. So those are points of continuity. It was also, I think, noticeable that Hammond resisted calls to reverse some of George Osborne's fairly recent changes, notably, for example, stamp duty land tax, which has attracted a lot of criticism from the property sector, and other related tax changes to that. Some commentators urged him to make a sudden cut in VAT, and obviously he chose not to do that either. Well, I suppose the particular surprise was right at the end of the Autumn Statement, where Hammond announced that this was his first Autumn Statement. It was also going to be his last, because I think he feels, and indeed a lot of other commentators, I think even the International Monetary Fund supported this, that what we've had in recent years, again going back to his predecessor George Osborne and Gordon Brown, and I suppose Alistair Darling in between as well, is that typically the Autumn Statement has ended up being a second budget following on from the spring budget. So what we're going to have next year is we will still have a spring budget, and then we will have a budget in the autumn, but after that, the following year, the spring statement will just look at the Office for Budget Responsibility forecast. It won't be a major fiscal event. Now, I think that is a very welcome and long overdue change, because I think it will mean that if we have an autumn budget, there'll be further time for parliamentary scrutiny, and I think potentially we could get better and more considered legislation, and we won't be spending our time right through the year constantly having to catch up with changes to the tax system. Well, at UNW we have a sizable specialist tax team, 6 partners and 20 managers and assistant consultants, and we cover the full range of taxes, so we're well positioned to advise clients on the changes that have been announced in the Autumn Statement, changes that are already coming in from previous budgets. And also, I think I should mention something that Hammond didn't comment on in the Autumn Statement, slightly to my surprise, and that's the HMRC's Making Tax Digital strategy, which is really a radical development. It was announced by Osborne in his Autumn Statement of a year ago, and this is really going to change the whole landscape of tax over the next few years, and that's something that really businesses and individuals are going to have to get to grips with in the future.